The Rocky Mountains of Colorado stand silent and imposing, their peaks cutting to the pale morning sky like jagged teeth. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, about 90 miles south of Denver, sits a structure so feared that even hardened criminals would rather take their chances in general population than spend a single day inside its walls. They call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. The federal government calls it the Administrative Maximum Facility. The world knows it simply as ADX Florence, and it is America's only true Supermax prison. On a frigid January morning in 2019, a convoy of black SUVs rolled through the empty roads leading to the facility. Inside one of those vehicles sat a man whose name had dominated headlines for months. His wrists were shackled to a chain around his waist, his ankles bound together, making even the smallest movement a careful calculation. 2 U.S. Marshals flanked him on either side, their eyes never leaving him for a second. This wasn't just another transfer. This was the arrival of someone so dangerous, so connected, so capable of causing chaos even from behind bars, that only one place in America could hold him. The prisoner stared out the tinted window as the facility came into view. From the outside, ADX Florence looks almost ordinary, like a sprawling concrete campus that could house offices or laboratories. But appearances are deceiving. What lies within those walls is a masterpiece of control, a place designed with one singular purpose: to break the unbreakable, to contain the uncontainable, to ensure that the most dangerous men in America never see freedom again. As the convoy passed through the first of 12 security checkpoints, the prisoner allowed himself a small smile. He had spent years building an empire on the outside, an empire that stretched across continents and generated millions in blood money. He had orchestrated murders from penthouse apartments, ordered executions with a single phone call, and evaded capture for so long that some had started to believe he was untouchable. But now the game had changed. Now, he was entering a place where his money meant nothing, where his connections couldn't reach, where his reputation was just another entry in a thick manila folder. The vehicle stopped at an underground entrance, a reinforced steel door that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. The door opened with a mechanical groan, revealing a dimly lit tunnel that descended into the earth. This was the only way in, the only way out, and it was monitored by 37 cameras, motion sensors, and pressure plates that could detect the weight of a single footstep. As the marshals escorted the prisoner through the tunnel, he felt the temperature drop with each step, felt the weight of the concrete above him, felt the reality of his situation settling into his bones like ice water. They brought him to a processing room where 6 correctional officers waited, their faces expressionless, their movements precise and practiced. Every item he wore was removed, examined, cataloged, and destroyed. No personal belongings entered ADX Florence, not a photograph, not a wedding ring, not even a handwritten letter. Everything from his past life ended at that threshold. He was given a standard-issue uniform, tan pants and a tan shirt, both stiff and new, smelling faintly of industrial detergent. Then they walked him through corridors lined with reinforced concrete walls 12 feet thick, designed to withstand explosions, earthquakes, and any attempt at escape. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the echo of their footsteps and the occasional metallic clang of a door locking somewhere in the distance. Finally, they reached his cell, a 7 by 12-foot concrete box that would be his entire world for the foreseeable future. The door was 4 inches of solid steel with a narrow slot for passing food trays. The walls were poured concrete, smooth and featureless. A concrete bed, a concrete desk, a concrete stool, all fixed to the floor. A shower in the corner. A toilet. A single window, for inches wide, angled toward the sky, so he could never see the ground, never see the mountains, never see anything that would give him a sense of where he truly was. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound like a gunshot, and the locks engaged with a series of heavy metallic clicks. He was alone now, truly alone for the first time in his life. No associates to command, no enemies to outwit, no empire to manage. Just silence, concrete, and the suffocating knowledge that this was forever. But what the guards didn't know, what even the warden couldn't have suspected, was that this prisoner had been planning for this moment for months. He had studied the layout of ADX Florence, memorized the guard rotations, identified the weaknesses in the system. He had arranged for certain packages to be delivered, certain people to be paid, certain favors to be called in, because even in the most secure prison in America, even in a place designed to eliminate all hope, there were still cracks in the armor. There were still ways to reach the outside world, still ways to send messages, still ways to make things happen. As he sat on his concrete bed and stared at the 4-inch window showing nothing but blank sky, he began counting the hours until his plan would begin. Because in 72 hours, something would happen at ADX Florence that would make the entire nation question whether any prison could truly contain evil. In 72 hours, the nightmare would begin. But when the first move was made, when the first piece fell into place, it wouldn't be him making the move. It would be someone already inside these walls, someone who'd been waiting for years, someone whose name would make even the bravest correctional officer's blood run cold. Warden Margaret Holloway had run ADX Florence for 8 years, and in that time, she had never lost a single inmate, not to escape, not to suicide, not to violence. Her record was flawless, and she intended to keep it that way. But on the morning of the third day after the new prisoner's arrival, she received a phone call that made her blood run cold. "Warden, we have a situation in Range 13. The voice of Senior Correctional
Attention
Officer
all units,
Davis
we've got a
crackled
situation
through a
developing
radio.
on Sector 3.
His
Eyes on
tone
the
was
feeds and
wrong,
coordinate with Central.
too calm, too controlled, like a man forcing himself not to panic. You need to come down here immediately. Range 13 was the deepest section of ADX Florence, where they kept the inmates too dangerous even for general Supermax population. These were the men who had killed other inmates, who had assaulted guards, who had proven time and again that they couldn't be trusted with even the smallest privilege. Among them was prisoner 09341, a man the staff only ever referred to by his number. His real name was Vincent Caruso, and 20 years ago, he had been the most feared mob enforcer on the East Coast. He was serving 8 consecutive life sentences for crimes so brutal that the prosecutor had cried while reading the victim statements in court. When Holloway arrived at Range 13, she found 6 guards standing outside Caruso's cell, their faces pale, their hands resting on their weapons. The cell door was still locked, but something was wrong. She could feel it in the air, that electric charge that comes before violence, before chaos, before everything falls apart. "What happened?" she demanded. Officer Davis stepped forward, a tablet in his hands, showing the cell's interior camera feed. "Ma'am, you need to see this." The camera showed Caruso's cell from a corner angle, capturing the concrete bed, the desk, the shower, the toilet. But what caught Holloway's attention was the wall behind the bed. Someone had scratched something into the concrete, carved deep enough to be visible on camera. It wasn't random scratches or crude graffiti. It was a message, written in block letters 2 inches high. The package arrived. Phase 2 begins tonight. Holloway's mind raced. When was this done? How did we miss it? Davis scrolled back through the footage, his hands shaking slightly. "That's the thing, ma'am. Look at the timestamp." He played the video at double speed, showing 24 hours of footage in just minutes. Caruso barely moved during that time. He sat on his bed, staring at the wall, occasionally standing to use the toilet or eat from his food tray. But he never approached that wall, never made any scratching motions, never even looked at it directly. "That's impossible," Holloway whispered. "Someone else had to have done it." "Ma'am, nobody enters these cells except during scheduled inspections, and those only happen once a week with 3 officers present. The last inspection was 5 days ago. That wall was clean." Holloway felt her stomach tighten. "Pull the footage from the new arrival, the one who came in 3 days ago. I want every second reviewed." While Davis worked on retrieving the footage, Holloway walked closer to Caruso's cell door and looked through the narrow observation window. Inside, Vincent Caruso sat on his concrete bed, his back against the wall, his eyes closed. He was 68 years old now, his hair white, his face weathered by 2 decades in Supermax. But there was something in his posture, something in the slight smile on his lips, that made him look dangerous despite his age. "Caruso," Holloway called through the door. "What's the meaning of that message?" He opened his eyes slowly, as if waking from a pleasant dream. When he looked at her, his smile widened. "Hello, Warden. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Answer the question. What message?" He turned his head slightly, pretending to notice the carved letters for the first time. "Oh, that must have been there when I arrived. You know how it is. Previous tenant probably left it. You've been in that cell for 6 years. Caruso. Don't play games with me." He stood up then, moving with surprising grace for a man his age, and walked to the door. His face was inches from the reinforced glass, his breath fogging it slightly. "You think these walls can hold us forever, Warden? You think because you've built a perfect cage, because you've eliminated every privilege, every comfort, every shred of humanity, that we're powerless." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We're not powerless. We're patient." Before Holloway could respond, an alarm blared throughout the facility, a sharp, piercing sound that meant only one thing: emergency lockdown. Every door in ADX Florence was programmed to seal automatically, every inmate confined to their cells, every guard mobilized to their emergency positions. But this alarm wasn't scheduled, wasn't drilled, and the timing made Holloway's blood freeze. Her radio erupted with overlapping voices, guards shouting over each other in controlled panic. The alarm cut through ADX Florence like a scream, and within seconds, the entire facility transformed into a war zone. Holloway sprinted through corridors she had walked 1,000 times, but now they felt different, hostile, as if the building itself had turned against her. Her radio exploded with reports from every range, each one worse than the last. Medical emergency in Range 7, 3 inmates down. Ventilation system compromised in the East Wing. Officers requesting immediate backup in Range 4. She reached the command center, a fortified room lined with monitors showing live feeds from every corner of the prison. What she saw made her heart stop. On screen after screen, inmates were collapsing in their cells, clutching their throats, blood streaming from their noses. But it wasn't random. It was targeted. Every affected inmate was someone with connections to rival criminal organizations, enemies of the cartels, witnesses who had testified against organized crime. "It's in the ventilation system," Chief of Security Thomas Grant said, his face ashen. "Someone introduced fentanyl into the air handlers, but only specific ranges. This wasn't an accident. This was surgical." Holloway's mind raced through the impossible logistics. Seal every range. Shut down all air circulation. Get hazmat teams to those locations now. But even as she gave the orders, she knew they were too late. The new prisoner and Caruso had planned this perfectly, timing it down to the minute. While every guard in the facility rushed to medical emergencies, while chaos consumed ADX Florence, something else was happening. Something worse. On monitor 12, she saw it. The new prisoner's cell door was open, and he was gone. But he hadn't run. The camera showed him calmly walking down the corridor, heading toward Range 13, heading toward Caruso. "No," Holloway whispered. "Grant, get teams to Range 13 right now. They're going to try to free Caruso." But Grant was already shaking his head, pointing to another monitor. "Warden, look at this." The screen showed the prisoner standing outside Caruso's cell, but he wasn't trying to open it. Instead, he was speaking through the door slot, his lips moving, too far from the camera's microphone to be heard. And on the other side, Caruso was listening, nodding, that same satisfied smile on his face. Then the prisoner did something that made Holloway's blood freeze. He pulled out a cell phone, one of the devices that should never have existed inside ADX Florence, and held it up to the door slot. Caruso's hand emerged from the opening, taking the phone, and for just a moment, the two men's hands touched, a brief connection between two monsters separated by 4 inches of steel. The prisoner turned and walked away, not rushing, not panicking, moving with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was happening. He reached a maintenance door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," opened it with a key that he shouldn't have possessed, and disappeared into the facility's infrastructure. Holloway grabbed her radio. "All units. The escaped prisoner has entered the maintenance tunnels. He's heading toward the external perimeter. Mobilize pursuit teams immediately." But she knew, deep in her gut, that they wouldn't catch him. This had been planned too well, executed too perfectly. Someone on the outside had provided intelligence, had mapped every camera blind spot, had identified every weakness in ADX Florence's supposedly impenetrable security. Within 20 minutes, the medical teams had stabilized the poisoned inmates. Within an hour, hazmat crews had cleared the ventilation system, but the damage was done. 3 inmates were dead, 7 guards injured, and most devastating of all, the myth of ADX Florence had been shattered. If it could happen here, in America's most secure prison, then it could happen anywhere. Holloway stood in Caruso's cell later that evening, staring at the message carved into the wall. Her forensics team had already photographed it, documented it, analyzed it. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was a cell phone they had found, still warm, still active, showing a single text message sent just minutes before. It's done. The others are ready. Phase 3 begins in 6 months. She looked through the cell door at Caruso, who sat on his bed, reading a book as if nothing had happened. Who was he? She asked quietly. The prisoner who arrived 3 days ago. Who was he really? Caruso looked up from his book, his eyes sharp despite his age. Does it matter, Warden? He came. He did what he needed to do, and now he's gone. You'll never find him. He has resources you can't imagine, connections that reach into places you don't even know exist. We'll catch him. Maybe. Probably even. But it won't matter. Caruso stood and walked to the door, his face calm, almost peaceful. Because there are others. There are always others. You built this place to break us, to isolate us, to make us powerless. But you forgot something important. What's that? In isolation, all we have is time. Time to think, time to plan, time to remember every face, every name, every person who put us here. And when you have nothing but time, Warden, you can accomplish impossible things. Holloway felt a chill run down her spine. This isn't over, is it? Caruso smiled, and in that smile, she saw the truth. This wasn't an escape attempt. This wasn't even about freeing inmates. This was a message, a demonstration of power, a warning to everyone who thought that concrete and steel could contain the truly dangerous. It's just beginning, Caruso said softly. Phase 3 will make today look like a practice run. And when it happens, when the real plan unfolds, everyone will understand that some men can't be caged. Some men are too connected, too prepared, too patient to be stopped by walls. He returned to his bed, picked up his book, and began reading again, dismissing her as if she were irrelevant. And as Holloway walked out of range 13, past the carved message, past the guard who looked at her with questions in their eyes, she realized that ADX Florence had been compromised in a way far worse than a simple escape. The prisoners had proven they could reach outside, could coordinate, could strike at will. And somewhere out there, the man who had walked into her prison 3 days ago was free, carrying messages to others, preparing for whatever Phase 3 would bring. The most secure prison in America had been breached not by force, but by patience, planning, and a network that stretched far beyond these concrete walls. And the terrifying truth was that they might never know how deep that network truly ran, or who else might be waiting for their turn to strike.